FPL Game Week 27 team selection, 4 green arrows in a row for me, but a huge captaincy call going into Game Week 27 and plenty to discuss before we hit the deadline. Hey everyone, Sam here, otherwise known as FPL Pricey. In today's team selection video, it might be a little bit shorter than usual. I don't expect everyone to be able to consume half an hour to 45 minutes worth of content just before the Tuesday deadline because there's only a day and a half to go through all of the content out there. I'll try and be concise with this video, starting off with my team performance from Game Week 26, which has just wrapped up. Now, I want to start off by talking about the assistant manager chip. Obviously, another green arrow for me. That's 4 on the bounce now, in large part due to the success of the assistant manager over the last 3 game weeks. 56 points overall across those 3 weeks. Double game weeks in the first 2 for Moyes, 22 points. Emery, 14 points. And now Glasner, with the only single game week I had for the chip, getting me 20 points away from home at Fulham with that 2-0 win, was better than I could have possibly imagined for the assistant manager chip. I did want to chase that table bonus in each of the fixtures, but I didn't in my wildest dreams think that in each of the game weeks I'd get something from the table bonus. So incredibly fortunate there. But I'd love to know in the comments below, if you've used the assistant manager chip, 2 things. Which route did you take and how many points did it score you? Because plenty of other routes did really well as well. Slot, for example, got 38 points if you just held on to him for 3 game weeks in a row, which is very good, and you've got the transfers. So how did you do if you used it? But secondly, what did you think of the chip? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think that FPL should get rid of it? Or perhaps should they make a couple of tweaks and go again with it in 25-26? Personally, I'm not so sure it was a great addition. I think the variant swings were probably slightly too big, and therefore some managers are going to feel fairly hard done by what is effectively betting on a team each week. Now, obviously, it's gone well for me, so it's not out of bitterness that I think that, but I'm not so sure if it's truly what FPL is. However, I'm open to other people's viewpoints on this. Let me know if you enjoyed the use of the chip, and of course how you did on it. Now, outside of the assistant manager, it was still a good game week for me, 100 points overall, although the -4 probably meant that I didn't really get into the 100 club for this game week. Nevertheless, a green arrow up to just inside the top 300k now, so I've more than half my rank in the last few game weeks with the assistant manager chip active. Very, very happy with that, 4 green arrows in a row. On the pitch, my starting 11, only a few returners, but the ones who did were incredibly valuable for me. Now, I brought in Cunha alongside Glasner and actually Kluivert as well for a -4 hit this week. Kluivert didn't pay off, but of course Glasner did. And Cunha also paid off really nicely, getting the goal. And as predicted, 1 return equals 3 bonus points for him. So a 9-pointer from him. The data's getting better week on week. And he's so talismanic for Wolves. I'm really happy to own him for the next run of fixtures. And of course, because I'm not free hitting in Game Week 29, he's going to be really valuable for me against Southampton in that week in particular. Elsewhere, Mbeumo, really strong performance on the Friday night for him. 14 points did make me wonder whether I should have backed against Salah at that point in time. Seeing how poor Leicester were as well was a bit of an eye-opener because it was the first time in a little while I'd watched Leicester live. Mbeumo and Brentford generally were able to pick them apart. So that's something for me to monitor moving forwards. The same goes for Southampton, by the way, a point for later on with the captaincy debate. I'm a Southampton fan. I can tell you right now, we have no idea what we're doing at the back. Bednarek went off with an injury as well. That could be a cricket score against Chelsea if things went against us. And then similarly, in Game Week 28 against Liverpool, could equally be very, very bad for us. Elsewhere, though, I was, of course, regretting potentially putting the armband on Mo Salah when I saw Mbeumo with my vice-captaincy do so well, but I had nothing to worry about because, of course, Salah with a goal and assist yet again against Man City in what was a very convincing 2-0 win. Obviously, they soaked up a lot of pressure, but they were able to keep the clean sheet, which was good news for Trent Alexander-Arnold, who did get skinned quite a few times by Doku down that right-hand side, but still managed to keep the clean sheet, looked knackered by the end of it, but I do expect him to start against Newcastle. Elsewhere, the only other performer really for me was Isak. 13 points from him, 2 goals, although 2 fairly sketchy goals. Some might call that penalty really confident and very, very good. To me, it was fairly fortunate to go in the back of the net, but we take those. He was about 80% effective ownership for me, so not a huge benefit, but a benefit nonetheless. The big other story for me was the amount of points that I put on my bench. Now, 12 for Pedro was frustrating, but if it wasn't for the unheard of Welbeck injury, I don't think he would have started anyway. So I don't regret that too much. But it's always frustrating to see a 12-pointer on the bench when Semenyo and Kluivert both blanked, and even Palmer as well, and he could have came in for any of those. But I didn't think he'd start, and I still don't think he would have if Welbeck wasn't mysteriously out all of a sudden. It does mean that Pedro might be a starter from this point onwards, though, so one to consider, but I don't massively regret that one. The one that was 50-50 for me was Lewis Hall. Now, when they conceded early on, I did think I'd made the right choice, and honestly, it wouldn't have been Robinson or Gabriel that I would have benched for Hall anyway. It was always up between Trent and Lewis Hall. Now, Hall came out on top, but he did concede, and getting the 2 assists, potentially the 3rd, because we haven't locked it in at time of recording, but I think it will just be the 9-pointer for him. Obviously frustrating to miss out on those points, but I'm only really 3 points down from that, and I did expect Nottingham Forest to score, but I'm just really glad that it wasn't Chris Wood this time for once, because that's another key reason I was able to secure a very convincing green arrow going into Game Week 27. Let me know, as always, in the comments below how you got on in Game Week 26 and whether or not you hit that illustrious 100 club in the game week. So like I mentioned, this video will be a bit shorter than usual, but one key debate that I couldn't miss out on is captaincy. Now, I've simplified it this week because the vast majority of us won't be picking between 4 or 5 options in a matrix. It will be between either Mo Salah or Cole Palmer. So here is the data laid out bare for you between the two that we're most likely to go for this game week. If you're looking at a differential, let me know in the comments below who you've got your eye on, but I think it's fair to say that most of us will be looking at either Salah or Palmer. Now, this is a proper form versus fixture kind of pick, and with form in mind, I don't think Salah's really necessarily what you would call form anymore. It's just quality. 41 attacking returns this season from just 27 matches played. He's owned by almost 3/4 of the player base, so there's no question about it. If you wanted to play it safe, Salah's your guy. Regardless of fixture, no matter who he plays, he seems to find a way to return at least once, but more often than not twice. In 11 games so far this season, he's returned twice in the Premier League. So this guy is averaging over 10 points a match now, and it just seems inevitable he's going to probably return at least once, probably twice against Newcastle as well. Now, fixture-wise, it's safe to say Cole Palmer has the easier one on paper, but Newcastle haven't been in the best defensive form anyway as of late. Conceded 3 against Forest, 4 against City the week before, and then 2 before that in a 2-1 home loss to Fulham. So they've conceded 9 in 3, 7 in 2, and Nottingham Forest did look very likely to pick them apart towards the end as well. They hung on, they did get the win, so fair play, but despite the good defensive data that Newcastle have had this season, they have looked a little bit more suspect at the back as of late. Now, Mo Salah, we don't really need any convincing in the player quality. We've already discussed that. The ownership is really sky high. So the safe option is undoubtedly backing the Liverpool player and just saying, you know what, I might gain a few points here or there because he won't be quite 200% effective ownership. He'll be something like 170, 180 again. But even if he gets a 10, 15, even 20 pointer, you're probably only gaining a handful of points net gain from him. On the other side of things, you've got Cole Palmer, who has got almost no form to his name at the moment. 1 assist in the last 5 Premier League games, but plenty of chances created, plenty of big chances created, just not being converted at the moment. Now, I think Nicholas Jackson being out is a huge factor there. They were linking up really well, and I think with him out, Chelsea are experimenting a little bit in that centre-forward role. They've tried Nkunku there. They've also tried Pedro Neto there as well, who actually look pretty good, but they're certainly missing that final piece of the puzzle in their front four. And I'm not so sure that it's really all moulding together very nicely for Chelsea. Their attacking build-up play looks a little bit disjointed. There was a pass map I saw where effectively from the back, from the 2 centre-backs, it either goes out to the left or out to the right, and there's no jostling between the two. There's no passes between the left and the right once the attacking phase gets going. So that isn't a great sign. So undoubtedly, if you're going for form right now, Salah has the advantage, and arguably even the fixture isn't that bad either. But I do still think this is a week where there is opportunity to go against Salah. Southampton at home, I will reiterate this, we are absolutely awful. last game week against Brighton and the week before that against Bournemouth as well, we were picked apart at the back with so much ease. I don't think a team needs to be in good form to find 3, 4, 5 goals against us right now. We've had a tight turnaround, a very quick turnaround between the Brighton loss and now the Chelsea game as well, and we have to go away to London to play them. We'll have very limited opportunity to set up differently on the training ground between those two games. And after the game, Juric, the manager, did come out and say, we need to change it again because we're just not capable of playing the defensive setup that I would like us to be playing. That on top of the fact that we also lost Bednarek about 20 minutes in to the Brighton game, and he looks like a doubt going into Chelsea as well. And although he might not be the best defender in the world, he's probably the best one we've got. So this could be a really huge game for Chelsea to get back to winning form, for Palmer to also hit the ground running, and I really struggle to see a universe in which he doesn't get a minimum of 2 attacking returns in that game. Obviously, variance can happen, he could blank, but the way Southampton are playing right now, I just can't see a way that we set up that is capable of keeping Chelsea and Cole Palmer out for 90 minutes. The data's not as good as Salah. The ownership effectively will be lower, so you might want to just go with the safety net of Salah because you could probably predict that he's going to get an attacking return or 2. But Palmer, if there was ever an opportunity to do so, it could be the week to bet against Mo Salah, considering the difference in fixture quality. Chelsea, if they're ever going to get back to their full flowing best at the top of the pitch, this could be the week that they do it against Southampton. Now, the expected points at the bottom here are via Fantasy Football Hub, but I've checked it out across a few other different competitors as well, and they are all suggesting that Cole Palmer has the edge. It is marginal, it's only by a fraction, but if you're a data-led manager, you might be persuaded by the fact that a number of these different sites, at least algorithmically, are suggesting Palmer's the way to go. I probably wouldn't let that weigh into my mind too much, considering they're fairly tight, and Mo Salah is Mo Salah. But this is one that is going to go right down to the wire for me. And even though I've just seen what Salah was capable of doing against Man City, I've just got a feeling that Chelsea and Cole Palmer are going to be able to rip Southampton apart. And that might be an anti-club bias for me because I've seen what Southampton have been doing recently. But that's all relevant data, right? And I still think that Palmer and Chelsea are a really good shout this week. And it's going to go right down to the wire for me. I think very marginally, I've got it on Palmer right now, but like I said, it could go right down to the last couple of minutes before the deadline for me. So on to my full team selection for Game Week 27. I've only got 1 free transfer. I do have 1.1 in the bank after receiving the 0.8 from the assistant manager, which is no longer active. So there are things I could do, but at the moment, because of my chip strategy over the next few game weeks, I'm looking at using transfers to navigate Game Week 29. Now, I've already put out my transfer options video this game week earlier on the Sunday morning, and that really went a long way as to showing what my route is to get to Game Week 29 without taking too many hits and navigating that one without being too far behind those using a free hit that game week. I've only got 1 this week. I'll have 2 by next week and 3 by the time I get to Game Week 29 if I was able to roll between now and then. And looking at my starting 11 this week, there's nothing really that suggests I need to force a transfer this week, especially for none of the players that I particularly want to own by the time I get to Game Week 29. Players like Mateta and Munoz are tempting, and if I had 3 or 4 free transfers and I could get them in this week and out before 29 without worrying about extra hits, I'd be tempted to do so. But given that I don't have that luxury right now, I'm fairly happy with this 11 and my bench going into Game Week 27. In goal, Brentford away for Pickford. I'm likely to get no clean sheet out of that, especially as I've got Mbermo in my midfield. It's not a great matchup, of course, but I can't have the perfect setup each week. And if Pickford was able to keep a clean sheet, then I'm probably not losing too much ground by having Mbermo in the midfield either, and vice versa as well. If Pickford concedes, it's quite likely that Mbermo gets something there. So I don't mind starting Pickford away at Brentford. Into the defence, I've got Trent, who looked tired at the end of the Man City game, but I expect to start mainly just because they don't have many other right-back options right now. Obviously, Bradley's out with a hamstring thing, I think, for quite a while. Gomez doesn't look like he's an option right now. And Kwanzaa, whilst he can tuck in there, I don't think he'd be trusted from the start for Newcastle. And although Trent played more minutes against Man City than maybe Slot would have wanted, I expect him to play against Newcastle. Not a great game for a clean sheet, but again, we know that Liverpool are capable of keeping clean sheets even against the best defences, and Trent has exceptional attacking data, so happy enough to start him. And then, of course, I'll have him for Southampton in game week 28. Gabriel away at Nottingham Forest. Obviously, I'm expecting Chris Wood to wipe out the clean sheet there, but Gabriel, as always, just stays in my starting 11. Arsenal's defensive data is still strong, and they'll get a clean sheet about 50% of the matches they play in. So I'm going to just play the odds on that one, hope that they keep it tight at the back and that Chris Wood doesn't punish me yet again. Over to Robinson away at Wolves. Obviously, I've got Cunha up top against Fulham at home, so those two kind of cancel each other out. Obviously, it limits the upside, but I don't think it's worth starting Pedro or Lewis Hall ahead of either of them, and it's not really worth moving either of them out right now for a transfer either. So although I'm not expecting much from Robinson away at Wolves, he could come away with an assist or two if I'm lucky, and maybe Cunha gets a goal against Fulham at home as well, and then at least they both get an attacking return. So that would be the ideal scenario. Obviously, far more likely that one of them does something and the other one doesn't. Moving into the midfield, I am very marginally putting it on Cole Palmer for the captaincy right now. Like I said, this is a decision that will truly be going right down to the wire. I will continue to analyse the data. Salah is so inevitable, and if I feel like I don't need to chase that much, it might make more sense to just go with Salah because he is the safer bet and the effective ownership is going to be sky high still. But I do think there's an opportunity there on Palmer. I do think that they're going to really do well against Southampton, so I am tempted to just leave it on Palmer. I am still chasing rank a little bit, and one way or another, they might just come out fairly even, so it won't matter anyway. So that is going to go right down to the wire. Right now it's on Palmer, but it's very tight between him and Salah. Over to Mbeumo, obviously I've discussed, I think he's a good option at home to Everton. Everton could do well at the back and they could keep it tight, but if anyone's going to score, it's likely to be one of Wissa or Mbeumo. Mbeumo has the penalties and he's a 90-minute man. He's going absolutely nowhere, especially because he has that fixture in game week 29. Afterwards, the fixtures do turn for Brentford, so I doubt I'll have him on a wild card. I'm definitely running into the last few game weeks of actually having him in my side this season, so I want to enjoy it while it lasts because he has been exceptional this season for all FPL managers, but also for me as well. So very happy with Mbeumo's performance. Then I come on to the two Bournemouth midfielders away at Brighton. Now, Brighton at the back against Southampton looked fairly secure, but it was against Southampton, and they have been susceptible to teams that are able to exploit a high line. Bournemouth are undoubtedly that. Cliver and Semenyo, as well as Dango as well, not forgetting him, could all really benefit from that against Brighton. I see this as a game with a few goals in it, and I do think that despite disappointing in game week 26, remember they were down to 10 men for the lion's share of that, so not a massive surprise. I do expect them to come back firing in game week 27 against Brighton away. And then they've got great fixtures through game week 29 and afterwards in game week 30 as well. So they're going nowhere for me. Semenyo is a 90-minute man. Cliver is probably about a 75 to 80-minute man, but he does have the benefit of penalties. So I'm very happy with both of them for now. Up top, I've got Cunha. Like I mentioned, if he gets any attacking return, he will almost certainly get bonus points. So a goal is more like a 7-point return for him. An assist is more like a 4 or a 5-point return. So I'm very happy to finally own him for, I think, the first time this season as well. But I'm fully expecting to carry him through to game week 30 now. And afterwards, I'll probably look at wildcarding. And I don't know if there'll be a space for him. So a bit like Mbeumo, I'm going to enjoy it whilst it lasts. I do expect, on average, an attacking return a game from him with this fixture run. And of course, a great game week 29 fixture against Southampton too. Isak just continues to perform well against good data as well. Liverpool away from home won't be easy. And of course, the matchup against Trent, I've got a lot of matchups in my 11 this week, which is not ideal. But again, both of those players can get attacking returns, and if one blanks, the other one's likely to have done the return. Isak is by far the most likely in the Newcastle lineup to be getting the attacking returns, and Trent is no slouch either. So I'm fairly confident that one of them gets an attacking return of some description. It might be a fairly muted game week for me, but I am looking at rolling the transfer. I'm not expecting a huge green arrow like I got in game week 26 because I've got a lot of different players playing against each other, but hopefully I can kind of tread water this week, maybe get a little bit of a green, roll the transfer going into game week 28, and then possibly going into game week 29 as well, I'll have 3 free transfers to play with, and then I can look at making 3 moves all at once and give myself a very nice looking free hit-esque Game Week 29 team, which I'd be fairly confident gets me a green arrow in Game Week 28 and 29. In fact, Game Week 28, I won't go through it today, but it almost looks like a free hit team in itself with the players that I've already currently got. So I'll take this one on the chin. I'm not expecting a huge green arrow in Game Week 27, but hopefully I can tread water, get maybe a small green, and that would be absolutely fine. If I could get my 5th consecutive green, I would be very happy. As we reach the end of today's video, any questions, do leave them in the comments below, and I'll try and get back to you before the Tuesday evening deadline. Do not miss that deadline, by the way. And as always, if you enjoyed today's video, if you could leave a like and subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I'll see you on the other side as we start preparing for Game Week 28.